Welcome! This video contains an introduction, an interview so you can gain deeper understanding of the subject from spirit level, and a group frequency calibration so you can start to clear the frequency distortion patterns around this topic. Enjoy! Hi everyone, my name is Karen Cheong and I'm here with my co-host Dennis Kelly. In the last episode, we discussed what frequencies and distortions are. You may remember that frequencies are extremely highly vibrating, just under pure source. And as that vibration slows down, that creates energy. And as that slows down even more, that creates physical form or density or matter, or what we consider to be our physical reality. If you change the frequency, you change your physical reality, because frequency governs form. You may also remember that distortions are the frequency patterns that prevent us from being our divine essence. And so what that looks like on the physical realm is that no matter how much you try, how much money you put into it, how much time you throw at it, how much coaching you do, you can't seem to transcend this one area of your life, whether it's in your health, your finances, your career, or your relationships. So as a recap, the benefits of frequency work are as we release these frequency distortion patterns, we start to vibrate higher and higher and become clearer and brighter, and we start to experience more synchronicities, more possibilities open to us than we can imagine, and we have more opportunities, and we experience a sense of completeness, of wholeness. And we realize that we do not need anything external to us, whether it's people or things, to make us happy. And if we continue to release these distortion patterns, we return to our natural state that I call spherical luminosity, or an experience of spherical abundance, abundance in all directions. So today we're going to be discussing what it's like to experience frequency work and how I can do what I do. So let's just jump right in. Dennis?
Karen, during our first video, you gave a couple excellent examples of working with people. And I'm real curious, after I've had a session with you, how do I feel, or what should I expect, or kind of what's kind of after the session like?
Sure. So first I'll talk about what's like in the session, just from what people have told me. Okay. So some people will experience different things. Some people might feel tingling in their body. They might feel heat. They might, if the person tends to get visuals, they might get a lot of visual stuff. They might hear certain things. They might feel things in their body. And some people feel absolutely nothing, which is totally fine, because it doesn't really matter what your sensory experience is. The work is happening on frequency level. After the session, what will happen, and just as a note, this is not me doing something to you. I am working with your higher self to remove these distortion patterns, okay? And we go exactly at the speed that your higher self dictates. So we're never gonna go too fast. You don't have to worry about that. And I'm always in response to that and in service to that. So just to make that really clear. And then in terms of after the session, it really depends. So in the next video, we're going to talk about detox. So if you're curious about that, you can watch that, because that's an important one. It depends on who you are. Some people experience no detox. So detox is simply, if you've ever done a cleanse, it's kind of similar in the sense, because all the work has happened on the frequency level. It's complete. Spirit works in real time. So once I delete the frequency distortion, it's done, it's gone. And your body has to catch up. Your physical, emotional, mental body has to catch up to the frequency work that's been done at frequency level, right? Because remember, frequencies are very, 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 very high vibrating. And as they slow down, they become energy. And as they slow down even more, they become form, or our physical realities, what we experience in the physical, okay? So similarly, after a session, because we've changed things on spirit level, which is very highly vibrating, it takes longer for the density, which is much slower vibrating, to catch up to what's happened on spirit level. So there's a period of integration, which can vary in terms of its intensity. Some people don't have detox whatsoever. They just go to sleep, they wake up, they've adjusted. So really, it'd be really helpful for people to watch the next episode, which is on detox, if you want more of an answer to that. So, but after the detox, when you've adjusted, you'll notice a lot of people will report that their lives, they'll notice the ripple effect in their lives. The people might change in their lives. They might feel different about different things that used to trigger them. They might really notice what triggered them and didn't. They'll just start to notice things more, and then timing will start to work for them, and opportunities will come in. So a lot of things can change depending on who you are.
You know, as you were going through that, I was trying to perceive it from your standpoint, and so as you start to work with someone, how do you figure out where to start? As far as chances are, I've got a few distortions here.
Yeah, we all do.
And I'm going to give you quite a few options.
Yeah. You do. Yeah. So how do I know where to start? So that's a wonderful question. And the reason it's wonderful is because I don't know until I begin. And the reason is because I'm not dictating this, your higher self is. So what happens is that because of my abilities, I tap into the infinite field of possibilities on the quantum level. Okay, we can talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
Whether you understand that or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I tap into the quantum field, all right, which people have talked about before. So what I do is then I find the frequency, the individuated frequency, or it's not really one frequency, it's really a symphony or a collective of frequencies that is you. And then I just know where to begin because your higher self gives it to me. I'm just in response to that. So it's not like I sense things through my senses. You know, there are people who are clairvoyant or clairaudient or clear whatever, right? There's different ways. I actually don't perceive through my senses. I just tap into the frequency, I find it, and then it's almost like I can read your DNA. I just know where to start, and I just begin.
You know, I find that amazing, and it would be so exciting to be released from some of these distortions or patterns that I've carried my whole life. And so now you've given me this freedom, to really step into, my true essence that you talk about. So right behind that has to be the concern, you release this distortion, is it gone forever? Or is it going to kind of walk back in?
Yeah, that's a fear that a lot of people have, and it's a valid one. So once I release the distortion on frequency level, that distortion is completely gone. It's done. There are a couple of exceptions. One is that each individual has free will to some degree. Some of us have less than others. But if you deliberately call that frequency back in, you can choose to do that. Now, most people don't want to choose to do that, okay, because they're trying to free themselves of them. So, but you can, with your free will, decide that you want that sucker back, okay? So that's one way you can do that. The second, but most people don't. I mean, why would you want to do that?
Yeah,
I mean, you just paid to have it removed, so why would you want to go there? I don't need that anymore. Right. So the other possibility is that, so imagine again that ball of duct tape, yes? It's layers of duct tape. So what happens is, because I'm being directed, this is not just me doing something to you. Again, this is a collaboration between me and your higher self. So once we remove a distortion pattern, like a layer of the duct tape, that's like basically incinerated. It's gone. Okay, it's completely deleted. So what happens though is sometimes there are multiple layers of a similar frequency pattern. Okay, so it could be that you have a distortion around, let's use the example of the client who had distortions around that I used in the previous episode, where she really felt like she could never be loved because she never felt she could deserve it. She had the frequency pattern of low self-worth or non-deserving running through her, okay? So for her, that came in many different layers, and different things had to be cleared first in order for her to get to different layers of a similar frequency pattern. So we released one of her not being worthy of being loved generally, and then it became from like the masculine, and then it became from the mother. So it was like all these different layers of a similar pattern having to do with receiving love and relationship, but she needed to clear all of them to be completely having a completely different reality of brand new guy being able to totally accept how much he loves her. That's a vastly different experience, but that's because she persisted and did the work to clear all those different layers. That makes sense? So it's not that the frequency pattern isn't gone, because it is, but sometimes nuances of that pattern show up at different levels, and you have to clear other things before you can get to that level. Make sense?
And that's part of the process.
Yeah, because we are not at the level of consciousness yet where I can just yank out all your distortions. If I did that, it would literally make you crazy. Like it would make you mad, because not mad as in angry, but mad as in insane, because it's too, your identity would be like ripped away from you.
It's just too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It would just completely, and I'm just not permitted to do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Karen, I find all this quite fascinating. Is there any way you can help us with exactly how do you do what you do? Yeah, I can understand where the question's coming from. I find it amazing.
Yeah. I do too on some level, actually.
I'm glad to hear that.
So essentially, all that's happened is that I have cleared enough of my distortion patterns that this natural gift can come in. So because I have cleared enough of my own distortion patterns, I resonate now at a high enough level that when people enter my field, it catalyzes their own awakening or their own remembering of their essence with fewer distortion patterns around them. They're like, oh, that's what's possible. That's what's possible. Because they don't really want the density and the heaviness of the distortion patterns around them. They just think that it's them. But when something else comes into their path, they're like, whoa, that's different. What? Right? It catalyzes on spirit level their own remembering. And so what happens is, in addition to that, which is right? It's a self-perpetuated acceleration, because now the person has basically seen like, oh, I don't want this. Like I don't want this density. I can have something different. The other way is because I've cleared these distortion patterns and I have this natural gift, because I am helping others clear the distortion patterns, which allows them to rise vibrationally and to awaken, remember. What happens is that pushes me higher. Right? Because it's this new paradigm of synergetic ascension. If I help others release their distortion patterns, they rise up energetically, it pushes me higher. So it's everyone's winning. In this new paradigm, everyone benefits. There can be no other way if you're in alignment with pure source in this way. So for me, I'm permitted to do what I do because I'm in such service. I'm in total service to pure source and that person's higher self, or the mastermind's higher self. I can't do anything to negate them. I can't control them. If I ever made any flinch and went towards that thing, it would be like the repercussions would be pretty terrible to me, actually, because that would be an abuse of that power. Does that make sense? It would be an oppression of them. So I wouldn't do it just because of who I am as a person, and also I am aware of the ramifications of it. So for me, I operate purely in integrity in that way, just because of the person I am, and also because that's how I'm allowed to serve and be in this particular function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Boy, that really helps. When folks take a look at your website, they see different options as far as being able to work with you. There's kind of that single one-on-one type of option, and then there's that group frequency.
The group frequency calibration, you mean?
Yeah. And so could you give me a little insight about, okay, so we've been talking mostly about, one-on-one. So the group frequency calibration, what exactly would that be, and how different would that be?
You mean from an individual?
And would that be as effective as an individual session?
Yeah. That's a really wonderful question, because a lot of people are conditioned in our culture to think I need a one-on-one in order to accelerate. So a group session, the way they're different, obviously, because obviously one is one-on-one and one is in a group. The very cool thing about a group frequency calibration is that because you're entering into the dynamic of a mastermind, which is simply when two or more beings come together with the same intention, in this case, to connect to pure source even more, and also to release the distortion patterns around that particular topic, there's tremendous momentum because you're meeting with the highest selves of everyone present. So there's a lot of momentum that you can use to accelerate and release even more than you could have on your own.
And you excuse me, and you call that the mastermind.
I call that the mastermind.
So that's kind of it's an advantage of working in a group.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what's lovely about it is because it gives you so much momentum, right? Because it's everyone it's like the power of prayer, when they say when you have 8 or more people with that same intention, it's like a catalytic, it's an exponential return just in terms of what you can influence. Similarly, with a group frequency calibration, it's the same effect, right? The more, especially when you hit 8 or more, this is Lynn Taggart's work, 8 or more, you get a lot of momentum moving, and the group can have individually a lot of acceleration in terms of their own, what they can transcend because they have the momentum of the group. And so what's really cool, in addition to that, is it's no accident who comes into the session with you. Like, you'll never see them, you'll never know who they are, but chances are you have similar patterns to them. Okay, I mean, I don't control this thing.
So there could be somebody from Arkansas, somebody from Alaska, somebody from Europe, somebody, and so they're in this group.
Yep.
And you've got that energetic swirl.
Yes.
And that mastermind of all these individuals.
Yes. And it doesn't matter when you listen to it, because I work in the timeless, and we'll talk about that some other time.
Okay.
But I transcend time and space, so it doesn't matter where you are physically, what time zone you're in, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
And another added benefit that I'll just mention is that whenever I work with people, whether it's in an individual one-on-one session, I call individual frequency calibration, or whether it's a group frequency calibration, which tends to be on a topic, there's recordings. So I record it. And the reason I record these is because as you listen to them more and more, it accelerates that release process of even more layers can come out, which is really cool. And it oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes will help people integrate that on the physical, mental, emotional plane, which is really helpful. So yeah, the recordings are super helpful. So whether you listen to it live or you listen to it on the recording, it really doesn't matter. The effect is the same.
You know, I'd like to just share something. I've had that opportunity to, to be on the live and then, to receive the recording. And I go back 2-3 days later and I listen to it. And I'll tell you what, it is just as powerful, but also I pick up things that I never heard the first time. And the impact is just as strong. So, and I couldn't have believed that at the beginning. I thought, well, that's a recording, I'd rather have the live, but both are extremely beneficial.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I've heard the same thing from people who never attended the live call. They just listened to the recording. So it doesn't matter where you listen to it live or recorded, it still has the same effect. And just so you know, we'll talk about the mechanics of this some other time, but the frequencies aren't in the recording. Okay? It's that I pull you into the time loop that thing happens. So it's like the mastermind comes into that specific time together, irrespective of when you listen to it. So we can talk about that more in depth some other time, but that's why the recordings work.
Fantastic. It's so exciting to hear and feel your passion. And that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your gift.
You're welcome.
Karen, could you help me? I hear so often when I look at your video or your website, GFC. Exactly what is that?
A GFC is a group frequency calibration, which looks a lot like a guided meditation on a particular topic. And what I'm doing is I'm helping you to remove the distortion patterns of that particular topic. And because you're coming together as a mastermind in a group to connect to pure source even more and to clear the distortion patterns of this particular topic, what happens is a tremendous amount of momentum starts to happen because of the energetic of the entire group. And each individual is able to move faster and ascend higher than they could have on their own. Welcome, everyone. This is the group frequency calibration entitled Accelerating Potential. And it is partnered or goes along with the second episode in Frequency Work Fundamentals, for those of you who are new. So please take a deep breath into your heart space. Hold it for a second or 3 before exhaling and holding out the voided breath for at least 2 seconds. And on your second breath, please do the same thing where you inhale. And this time hold your inhaled breath for at least 2 seconds longer than you did the previous breath before exhaling and holding out the voided breath by at least 2 seconds longer than you did your previous breath. Noticing as you do this how your body is being held, either on whatever you're sitting, standing, or lying down on, and your body's relative position in the room as you take a third breath in, holding it for at least a second or two longer than you did your previous breath, even if it's uncomfortable. Exhaling and holding out the voided breath for at least a second or two longer. Good. And whenever you're complete with those 3 breaths, please breathe normally into the space just beneath your sternum. So your sternum is where your ribs meet in front of your body, that sort of solid bone in your rib cage. It has 2 ends, one near your throat, one near your belly. The side near your belly, just underneath that point where your sternum ends. It's a fleshy point. It'll be soft and a little bit painful if you push on it. Just continue to breathe normally. Just note that I am already working on you as I'm speaking. The mastermind is gelling together, and the mastermind is when 2 or more beings come together with a common intention, in this case to connect to pure source even more, whether or not that's your conscious desire, it's your higher desire, and to transcend whatever distortion patterns are preventing you from the topic that we're speaking on. And just as a note, this is the meeting of our highest and best selves because of the intention. So you don't have to worry about picking up other people's stuff. Okay? Taking another deep breath into that fleshy point. So the first frequency distortion pattern that I'm going to remove, it has to do with really your own sense of timing and control over time, more specifically, okay, or feeling out of control with time. So meaning that you've are either being pushed too fast, like you feel that way, or things are happening too quickly around you, or you feel like things are taking too long around you, okay, whether it's people or circumstances or whatever. So either way, time is out of control for you. It's not in the sequencing or the time that you want. It's out of sync with your timing or your intention, let's call it that way. So it's a desire to control time. Okay, so time is actually a really big deal. We'll talk about that in a minute. As you breathe into your fleshy point just beneath your sternum. Please note, for those of you who are new, that I'm working on you in group, subgroup, and on the individual levels. And if I say something that resonates with you, it's likely yours. And if I say something that you really are very opposed to, have a strong reaction against, it's very likely yours. And so I invite you to be open to that possibility. Okay. So what I'm going to do is release this distortion pattern, which is a big one actually for many of you. And I will bring you into more alignment with time in just a minute. It doesn't have to make sense to you. All you have to do is breathe into that one point. The next distortion pattern actually has to do with being overwhelmed by time, or feeling like there's not enough time, or being bullied by time. So it's one of those three patterns depending on who you are, okay? Or perhaps more than one of those patterns running in you. Please note that you will hear me making sounds on my end. So you might hear me exhale sharply or yawn, and I'm not tired. You may hear me hum, or you might hear me snap. If that's the case, it's because that is how I currently remove the distortion patterns. I suspect that will change, but for now, that's how it works for me. There we go. Wow. Some of you really struggle with time. So if that is you, let's remove this so you get more ease with time. Okay. So now please breathe, or imagine, see, sense, feel, or become very aware of your solar plexus, which is a space between your belly button and where the ribs meet in front of your body. All right, so this has to do with rigidity of rule sets and rigidity of mind, okay? About time specifically. So you want when you want it. And if you don't get it on that time, it really upsets you, all right? And so it's totally understandable. We're all very human. And in our culture, we'd like to receive what we want pretty much instantly. And sometimes we're very, very controlled or attached to when something appears to us and to the thing itself. And to truly be in the creator state or the co-creator state, let's just say, because we are creating with pure source all the time, the harder you are, or the more rigid you are in your desire for outcome on a certain time, the harder it will be for you to manifest. It actually requires fluidity to some degree, and it can actually be faster than you imagine, and it can actually be better than you imagine. But the thing is, we're so attached to exactly what it needs to look like and exactly what time it needs to be on, we don't really allow for anything else. Right? So in order to accelerate, we need to release control over many things. And in this particular case, it's the control over time. All right? Yeah. All right, let's do this. As you take your next breath in, whenever that is, and you breathe into that spot just beneath your sternum, let's ask ourselves the question internally, inside our own minds. How can I connect only to pure source even more? So that question again is, how can I connect only to pure source even more? Or if you prefer, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And that again is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And it really, because of course we're always connected to pure source, and it really doesn't matter which one of these two questions you ask yourself, whatever resonates best with you. Okay? So as you ask yourself that question and breathe into this very specific point beneath your sternum, Imagine, see, sense, or feel that point deep inside your body becoming brighter or more brilliant or more expanded or somehow just more tingly or whatever it is, as you ask yourself that question. Yes, good. And as you are allowing for that, I'm working on my end to help enhance your bandwidth. So just increasing your connection, your connectivity, let's say. Because of course you already have it. And please note that this brilliance that you are witnessing is you. Very nice. Now take another deep breath into your solar plexus, which is the space between your belly button and where your ribs meet in front of your body. Okay. So this next distortion pattern has to do with, how do I say this? Has to do with imposing your will. And of course, having a strong will is important. We'll talk about surrendered will in an upcoming video. It's actually very important to understand it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to not remove your will, because obviously you need it, but allow for a will that is informed from a higher perspective to come through. Okay. So essentially softening the distortion of the cultural and religious and lineage programming that is of the mind alone. Okay? That even dictates that you want a certain thing. So that's quite a big thing. So I'm going to be quiet or not speak rather, for about a minute or so as I work on this for you. And all you have to do is continue to breathe into your solar plexus. So please take a breath now into your heart space. Yeah. So this next distortion pattern has to do with fear of acceleration, actually. So you've been asking for change, which is why you're likely even listening to this. And there's some part of you that knows this change is fundamental, whether it's conscious or not. And there is very much this frequency distortion pattern of fear around acceleration. So let's remove this so that you can get to whatever change or whatever outcome that you're hoping for more quickly, so you're not being slowed down by this frequency, which is certainly not helping you. And as a note, you will only move as quickly as your spirit will allow. This is not dictated by me or anyone else. This is purely yours. No one can dictate the speed of our journey other than ourselves, and in conjunction with Pure Source, of course. Nice. Good. And now this time, please taking a breath in from your belly button all the way up to your heart space, please. And if you need to have a tube connecting these 2 points, or you need to focus on the entire space in between, or you can hold the 2 points loosely in your focus, that's perfect. Whichever works best for you. All right. So the next frequency distortion pattern, as you breathe between your belly button and your heart space, has to do with fear of change. Now, this is really deep set in many of you. So if you have listened to the previous GFC, you'll have noticed that I addressed this once on a certain level. For those of you who are new and listening to this one alone, I will remove this frequency distortion pattern. But for those of you who've heard the first one, this is a different layer for you. Okay, so it sounds the same when I'm talking about it verbally, but it is a deeper layer that needed to be released after whatever we cleared for you on the first GFC. Okay? So, just so you know. And it's for those of you who've listened to the first one. It's coming up again because there's a very deep-seated difficulty in releasing, in letting go of things. So that's why it's coming up again. All right? It's a tough one, especially if you're a control freak. And I get it because I used to be one. So please know there's no judgment. This will allow you to go faster without this here, because you'll be able to let go more easily. It will also allow for more ease. Good. So now, as we end, feeling your pelvic girdle. So imagine, see, sense, feel, or become very aware of your pelvic girdle. Yes. And now please imagine the frequency, energy, or vibration of the center of the earth, or Mother Earth. So please imagine that that frequency, vibration, energy comes up through the earth, through your feet, through your legs, and is now resonating into your pelvic girdle and up your spine. Yes. Now this provides a very stable anchoring for you as you accelerate. Yes. Yeah, working to amplify the frequency into your pelvic girdle and your spine of the earth. Mother Earth specifically, she has a very specific consciousness, a very specific frequency. There we go. We are from her, and therefore she's a very pure, safe frequency that is grounding and extraordinarily beneficial to us. There we go. So I'm going to leave you here in the resonation of the earth for as long as you would like. And I look forward to working with you on our next GFC.